So everybody, I just started out this podcast, as I always do, trying to pawn off my dog or my snake. And Chris just jumps in.
I sniped in.
He totally got his own way. Like, he basically is rehoming his dog now.
Yes. That was so
She's
fast,
so
too.
cute.
Do you guys hate your dogs?
Hates us. Yeah, I do. I have a love-hate. I have
An
a
accurate word. Yeah.
I hate my dog. Like, I crazy love my dog. But I understand the idea of loving and hating. Because,
There are 2 upstairs.
well, we're house sitting for one. We're dog sitting? What are we doing?
Dog sitting?
Yeah, we're Moy knows about that.
Listen, not today. Not today, man. Let me wake
Anyways,
up.
so we've got this dog, and she's really cute. I've got 4 kids, and it just is so inconvenient. Like, my kids, it's like, my gosh, they're my people. But my dog is not my people.
Yeah.
And I'm sure people are going to turn this podcast off right now.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.
Yeah.
We should just make this. We should have an adoption moment.
Yes, a
on the
rehoming
podcast.
adoption moment.
And the first 2
Are our
animals
dogs?
up for adoption are our 2 dogs.
And what's your dog's name?
Pippi.
Pippi.
Yep.
Pippi. Gosh, if you guys
And
want
she
Pippi.
truly looks like Dobby, the
Oh,
house
yeah.
elf.
Oh, so Chris is now showing
Okay,
pictures of his
no.
dogs.
Pippi's really cute.
Yeah, he didn't say she wasn't cute.
She's
Listen,
real cute.
I know, but Dobby looks
the
like
ears.
a naked
It's just the
cat.
ears. Yeah, I mean, she's
Pippi
got
has
hair.
fur. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody, the person that just said naked cat is Savannah Locke. So Savannah Locke, she is one awesome human. She's a theologian, she's an author, she's a blogger, she's a singer. Actually, the new Faithful project, it's got Amy Grant, Ellie Holcomb, all these amazing women are writing these songs. So you can just go check out the Faithful project, and it's amazing. Savannah is a deep well. This episode will definitely be challenging in a lot of great ways, and per usual, pretty dang funny as well. Hey, I just wanted to say a little shout out to a few of you who have just jumped in to do a one-time gift or support monthly. I mean, it's from like $10 a month to more than that. So you guys, I just want to say thank you. For those of you who have been giving, thank you. For those of you who just jumped in right now, we've got Sarita. I'm just going to say that. Hopefully that's how I say it. Sarita B. We've got Amy M, Christy H, Jim C, Amber A, Caitlin D, Ann D, Sherry G, kind of like Kenny G, but I don't think he's actually jumped in to partner and to do this with us. But we are only funded by you. So you guys, thank you for doing this. And that just is such an encouragement to us, for all of you who have written us letters or who have emailed us just with encouraging words. So thank you for journeying with us in this 10,000 minute experiment. And I'm really hoping that this is really changing your week, and you see Jesus in a bigger way, and you see yourself not just as an individual Christian person, but as part of this bigger community of Jesus people, as a beautiful force in this world. So please go to 10,000minutes.com if you guys want any information, or if you want to learn how to partner with us in the future. This is an awesome episode. Here we go. Chris is still showing pictures of the dog, if you guys are
She's a
wondering.
little concerned there.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, that would be
But
the
that's not as
adoption
bad as
photo.
it gets. Yeah, she's like,
And then the Sarah McLachlan Arms of the Angel would be behind it.
Totally.
arms of
With an animated tear.
Zoom in. Oh, man.
We changed our table today, so Tim and I are staring
Staring at each
eye
other?
to eye.
Yeah. You guys are on a date. This is going to be really awkward.
Well, yeah, I mean, we just spent 25 hours in a car together, but
We
we
did.
were side to
It's
side.
usually it's shoulder to shoulder.
And when we go on walks together, we're
Shoulder
always
to
side
shoulder.
to side.
Wow.
This is going to be an uncomfortable amount
Yeah.
of eye contact,
I just
and I'm going to lean into it.
My gosh. He's not stopping you guys. He's not
Don't
stopping.
blink.
So, Savannah, welcome to the table.
Thanks.
And this is just what we do the entire time.
It sounds like it, yeah.
We just are dumb.
Timothy, I've listened to these podcasts.
You have?
Yeah, I have.
Oh my God.
How are they holding
Ellie's
up?
episode, Mike's episode. Yeah,
What's your
it's been
favorite
an
thing I said?
emotional journey. Yes.
It has.
No.
It's been I love that. Thank you. It's been so fun and good for our souls as well, because we're learning with people the whole time. So,
Yeah, it's great.
so welcome. So what do you know? Why are you here?
Timothy Howard is your middle name.
Yes,
right?
it is.
Yeah, and then I can't remember either of your middle names. Give me a second. Chris, it starts with a k sound.
Oh,
Yes,
wow.
yes,
Let's
yes,
go.
yes.
Let's go.
That's close
That's a real fan
enough.
right
Right, because
now.
didn't somebody say if they're all K's, that'd be a bad thing?
Yeah.
Would
Yeah.
be,
Oh,
but
God.
it's
Did
not.
you say that?
Nope, I think it was Mike. Could have been
Okay.
Donahue.
Could have
Oh,
been.
yeah.
You know, but
Donahue.
it's-
Crap.
What's your middle name?
Kyle.
Kyle, that's it. And then yours had something to do with Mary backwards. No, this is your middle name.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Savannah.
All of it's in my brain somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
It's floating. So it's
Easter
proof.
eggs.
This is my proof that I do listen.
Totally.
Receipts.
I'm also
Yes.
impressed that you can retain because I listen to a lot of podcasts and I don't remember
Even
anything.
ours.
Yeah, I'm like,
It's
I listen back to ours and I'm like, wow, that's pretty good. I forgot.
The part that you spoke, you're like, that was
like,
Chris. Yeah, nice.
it's Iram.
Yeah, Iram. That's right.
Iram Imoy
Imoy.
Donis.
Donis.
I think it's so pretty.
Yes,
I'm into
it's
it.
You
Beautiful.
guys are so kind.
No, I'm actually serious.
I know. Just words of affirmation are at the bottom of my love languages, and so I'm trying
Give
to
her a gift,
accept it,
Tim.
but
Give
I'm
her
just
a
like,
gift.
okay,
Okay. I think you look really pretty today.
sweet.
That's it. That's all we got.
Goodness. Thank you. I'm trying.
Okay, so besides listening to every single one of our podcasts and being our number one fan on Facebook.
You're getting a T-shirt after this.
She actually
Woohoo.
she won the contest.
Yeah.
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 If you
It was a
emailed enough,
It was SL. The letters were SL. I never thought about that.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
I had 4 phones out. I was calling when
Oh,
the
yeah.
callathon happened.
Oh my
and
gosh,
I made my way
this
in.
is the best.
Oh,
It's all
too
being
good.
revealed. Besides listening to our podcast, what do you spend your days doing? Because you do a lot of things, and you're real bright, but you're fun. You've got so many great gifts. You can go deep on things. I'm a fan of you. So what do you do other than
Then
listen
listen
to our
to your
podcast?
podcast, which does take up a lot of my
Yeah.
time.
We're
Well,
on 27
I-
this time. This
yeah.
is 27, right?
This is episode 27?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that's 26 hours of my time.
Yeah. Yes.
I write for a couple of different people, like blogs and devotionals, Bible study, stuff like that. Then do songwriting, lead worship. I also work for a theologian named Jared Bias, who has a podcast called The Bible for Normal
you
People.
work for Jared Bias?
Yeah.
How do I not know this?
Come on. That's
I've
why
become
she's on here.
obsessed with the Bible
You-
for normal
oh,
people. Like I've been
yes.
driving. I'm gonna fan boy. Is that a thing?
Let's go. Yeah.
You're
For a
just going to be a
second.
fan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I found it some way, probably through Pete Inn's a random book suggestion, and
Yeah.
I've bought every book.
Yeah. They're great.
I've listened to probably 100.
They're amazing.
Plus, since July. It's crazy.
Oh,
So,
that makes me so happy. Yeah,
tell
so
him I
work
say
for him.
hello.
I will.
So what do you do for him specifically?
So he's an interesting person, but like you were saying, what do you do? And that's kind of the story of my life in the words of One Direction, but just 7 different things. So Jared also does that. He has his own business. It's called Common Good, and it's a family business advisors group. And so I help him with that. He also
What's that do?
he helps family businesses move from one generation to the next because a lot of them fail in that Gen 1 to Gen 2 transition.
Okay.
I was really surprised, over 60% of businesses in America identify as family businesses, which I would not have guessed. So he does that, and I help him with that, just doing random stuff
Yep.
and being a people person,
Yep.
which is a good thing. And then the second thing, he also has books. So I have just organized and did a whole tour for him, which was really fun. And then he also has his podcast, The Bible for Normal People, and he just launched a mini series called How to Disagree, which is based on his book, Love Matters More. And so the podcast that we just did, it was really fun. I actually vetted all of these people, and we chose 6 different people who were couples or father-daughter or friends who disagree about really important things.
Wow,
About
I
politics,
love
about
it.
religion. We talk about vaccines, about everything, racism, all of it. And so
Yeah.
we just did a mini series on that launched last week. And so I just kind of
Called?
help his life run. It's called How to Disagree
How to disagree.
with Jared Bias. Yeah. So that's what I also do for work. Yeah. I do all those things. Oh, and I have a tiny house.
And a tiny house.
Yes.
Anything else? What else do you do?
Tim, what don't I do?
yeah, yeah.
Literally,
I mean,
feel
that's
like
a Monday. So
Total
what about
Monday.
the rest of the
Yeah,
week?
yeah. Yeah, boring. We're 1 hour,
yes,
and you make out.
with my husband.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yes. Which is so great. I mean, that is an appropriate question to ask.
With my husband of 6 years.
Todd.
Yes.
Yes.
Todd,
Yes. I've never
who
seen
is
it,
the
but
light of my life.
he is a pretty great human.
He is an amazing person.
Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, I'm married to Todd. I make out with Todd.
Okay.
And I have 2 dogs, Prudence and Bentley.
And Pippi
And Pippi's on the way.
and Lucy.
It's going to be great.
And a pet snake.
And Pippi and Lucy are on the way. Yeah.
And you said you had an aversion to snakes as well?
It's not that I have an aversion to them, but if given the option between a snake and a dog, I just feel that the wise choice would be a dog.
What about both?
Yeah, that is a great question. And you guys, I'm in school. I forgot.
Yes.
I'm getting my master's. Yeah.
Yes.
In what?
Anabaptist, literally what I don't even know. I was like, what do I do with my time when you were saying that? And I was like, oh, I'm in class on Mondays and Tuesdays, getting my master's in theology and Anabaptist history.
See, this is why it was like she's going to come on here because she knows some stuff.
Let's go.
I'm starting to get grounded, everyone. So I just want to apologize for the first 20 minutes of this whole
No,
podcast.
you're great. We're great. We're great.
I'm starting to drop in. We can just edit all
we're
of it.
fine. We're
Yeah.
doing great. We got nothing but time right now.
Yes, yes.
So we're still in this long series on practicing the presence of God.
Yeah.
And what does that look like? It's good for us to talk about the stuff in our heads and what we know and what we think, but what's it look like to actually live that out? So I guess, what do you know about that, about practicing the presence of God? And what do you see as you're talking to all these different people and studying all this stuff? How's that for a broad question?
Yeah, no, but it actually feels really specific to me. One of my classes in June was about just the church and what our purpose is as the church. And one of the books we read was called Faithful Presence by David Fitch, who was actually my professor as well. And he talked a lot about practicing the presence of God. And it kind of changed the way that I perceive being in the presence of God and being aware and awake to the presence of God. And it did adjust my life in a lot of ways in June of starting to wake up every day and not just flow into the rhythm of, he calls it the regime, where we're in like all of these different regimes of like anything from capitalism to like the regime of your workplace or whatever. And we are surrounded and inundated by these things that want our attention. And so to wake up and to put our intention into the kingdom and to being aware and awake to the presence and the activity of God. And so in June, when I had that class, I kind of left and I thought, okay, what would it look like for me to actually wake up every day and say, okay, God, what are you doing in the world and how can I be awake to it? And when I witness things that are happening in the world, how can I slow down enough to open up space for you to move? And so that has honestly, I mean, I've listened to the podcast, so I know that you guys don't mind getting serious, but it's honestly been a pretty painful experience because I think when you're awake to the presence and the activity of God, God is always with the broken. And Todd, my husband, calls me Eagle Eye for this reason, because even when we're driving in the car, I'll just look and I'll be like, I'll see people on the side of the road and I'm awake to them. And I'll be like, hey, we need to stop and help this person. And we'll stop and we'll help people. And when you do that, you're entering into these stories. And it's not that you're entering in as a rescuer or a savior because God's already working in their lives, but you are entering in as a witness to their lives. And there's something that's really vulnerable about that and requiring of that. And so when I think about practicing the presence of God, that's what I think about. I think about paying attention to where God's moving and being willing to slow down and witness it.
Okay, so you said, I love that. I mean, we could not be more in agreement with that. So we don't have to disagree on that and practice disagreeing. I think you're an idiot. I'm going to be real honest, right? Don't take it personally. I think you're an idiot. But you said that, to be honest, this has really been hard for me. So what's been the hard part?
The hard part is being in pain, being with people in pain.
Okay, so that's been the deal.
Yeah, and I think last week, actually, Todd and I were driving to see our friends in Kentucky, and when we were almost to the venue, it was like a 4-hour drive, I saw this woman on the side of the road and she was crying, and I just felt prompted by the Holy Spirit to stop. And so we turn around and I jump out of the car and we entered into a crime scene and we didn't know it. And we entered in and we actually witnessed someone take their own life. And we were with this woman while she was grieving this person's life being taken, in the immediate aftermath. We were the ones that called the police. We saw the crime tape. We saw the body being taken away. And all of this trauma and tragedy that happened because not only were we paying attention, but because we were willing to slow down and be a witness to it. And that experience, it's an emotional experience. We've been in grief counseling and in trauma counseling for the last couple of weeks because of that. And to have to process the violence and the sadness of someone's life, of someone taking their own life, but then also the immediate grief after that, it has shifted my perspective on I don't know, like the incarnation and what does it mean for God to be with us, like Emmanuel, God with us. I think I always perceive that as God watching us like I watch a movie. So like God witnessing our lives like I watch Ozark.
Yeah.
But that experience shifted everything for me, where I realized, no, God didn't witness our pain like we watch television shows. God actually got into our pain, and it affected him in the same way that experience affected me and Todd. And it was so transformative to realize that not only does Christ do that for us, but also when Jesus says, and you will be my witnesses, like that's what our whole mission is to go and bear witness to people in their pain, so that not only are they not alone, but that we can actually open up space for the Holy Spirit to move and to do healing. So that's not easy. Who wakes up in the morning and says, how can I bear witness to other people in their pain today?
Yeah, I'm even thinking of the word bear, meaning like the stick that holds up.
Yes.
That's interesting. I've never thought about that, even bearing witness.
Yeah. And witness statements. Like when the police said, what is your witness statement? And it hit me. I was like, oh, and you will be my witnesses. And like the idea of like, this is what practicing the presence of God is bearing witness to God's activity in the world. And God's activity in the world flows in brokenness and in pain. And so I think that there's a reason why all of us are so distracted, is because it's hard to be in those situations, and it's not easy, and it requires a lot, and it cost us something to witness that. But also the flip side being, and a lot of healing has been happening around this, is that like the flip side being that person who took their own life didn't die alone, like Todd was with them. And then also that woman didn't grieve alone, because I was with her.
Wow.
And so there's like the flip side of the healing piece of it too. So that's what I think of.
Interesting to me. I just have this image of you being aware and awake enough to the presence of God that it could speak to you in that moment and say, hey, stop.
Yeah.
And then what happened when you said yes was then you became Christ to those people. And so by you being awake to the presence of God, you became the presence of God for someone else.
Yeah.
And it makes me think, God, how good you are. Like I'm trying to put myself in that woman's shoes and like thinking, oh, this is God right here with me. And to think that that's how he cares for us. Like, oh, there's no one here. Okay, there's that car. Come on.
Yeah.
You're coming over here, and you're gonna be my presence for these people now.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible.
And Todd and I have had so many of these random experiences, not nearly as intense as that one. That one obviously is on my mind the most because it was so recent. But ever since this thing in June, this class where I've just said, okay, God, like I'm going to be awake and aware of this, we have been seeing just the most random things. And part of me wants to say, oh, like God's like bringing all of these things into our lives. But then I'm like, no, this stuff's happening. And my eyes are just open to it.
That's right.
Like even like a couple of days ago, Todd was like, I'm going to put blinders on you when we drive in the car. He was like, play Tetris. But we saw this man who, it was the weirdest thing. This man was just sitting by his car, like on the ground, and then this woman was like sort of walking by, and I was like, love, I'm so sorry, but I feel like we need to stop and help these people. And this man had just had surgery on his legs and couldn't lift himself up, and he had fallen when he got out of the car, and so we just went and like helped him get into this car. And it's one of those moments where Todd got in the car and he was like, I don't think that these things are happening more. I think we're just noticing them more.
Okay, so how were you invited into having a deeper awareness? Because we know these things. Oh my gosh, it'd be great for me to do these things.
Totally.
And I love that idea that it's not like God's really bringing more of these things into our lives. It's like, no, they're probably always here, just like pain. So how did you, like, what were the steps, or what was the practice that you began to do to help you be more aware?
To get tangible. So one thing that my professor talked about, he has this like little life group thing that he does every week on Sundays, which actually my life group does every week on Sundays too. And he said that before they start the meal, they just all stop for a second and say, God, help us be aware of your presence in this meal, or help us be present to your presence in this meal. So present to your presence. So that like alliteration just stuck with my mind. And so before I do anything, before I walked in here, I said, God, help me be present to your presence in this podcast. And it's sort of like this like brain hack thing where before you do anything, you say in your head, you set your mind up to see what's there. And it versus, I don't know, it's so strange because it's like, there's a lot of language in the New Testament about this idea of like a veil. But I think so many of us do live with like a veil over our eyes where we're like not present to anything or not aware of anything. So it's more like being aware of the blinders that are on there and then saying, God, help me be present without the veil. Let me be present to what you're doing. And so I think for me, it's just been a lot of like brain hacking before I do anything, just like verbally saying out loud, let me be present to your presence, present to your presence. So that's been helpful for me. Is that practical enough?
Not really. No, that will be our practice this week for sure. So what stops us from being aware? I mean, we all want this. I mean, this is why I began to write this X on my wrist every day was like, but so what stops you from being aware?
My phone. My phone is probably the number one thing, especially if I wake up and it's the first thing I get on in the morning. I think that comparison, which I know you guys have been talking a lot about on the podcast, but the comparison piece can also get me when I get swept away. And also this language of regime, like I know that sounds so like such a strong word. It sounds like something from Star Wars, but that's actually been helpful for me to realize that there are these like kind of the powers that be at play and these regimes that we're constantly being swept into without even recognizing it. And I think for me, like one of those things, like money is like a huge thing where it's like, if you wake up every day and you're thinking, like we've been trained to think, how can I make more money so that I can, in some invisible year down the road, retire and never have to worry about money again. But what that ends up doing is perpetuating us to just strive instead of slow down. Because what do you do when you're resting? You're not making money. So like, I think that's like a big one that I've been thinking through a lot and being convicted about a lot is like the idea of like, we live in a capitalistic society and that's fine. There are benefits to that. The negative side is that our bodies and our lives become currency rather than a gift to enjoy. And so I think for me, recognizing that time is not money, like untraining my brain to think that time is money. Time is not money. Time is a gift. And time is something where I can enjoy being in the presence of God. And so for me, things like that have been really helpful just to like recognize what's sweeping me away.
Yeah.
And try to untangle those.
Yes. So much untangling. Go more on regimes.
Okay, so it's intense language. But
no. But okay, I mean, is there a synonym for regime that would make...
I kind of like the idea of regimes. The powers that be is another thing. So Walter Wink is an author and he talks a lot about the powers that be. And he essentially talks about, he's dead now, so he doesn't talk anymore. But he wrote about how each culture, microculture that we engage with has a power behind it. And we can basically get swept up in those things, or we can continue to align with the kingdom of God. So I think that's like what regimes are just recognizing like the powers of these different cultures. And it can be any culture from CCM, Christian music, has its own powers that be, its own culture.
So get real practical. Like what will go? I mean, if you guys have thoughts, I just want to know, what are these regimes? Because I love this idea. Like, let's just call them out.
Racism, capitalism, patriarchy. CCM is one, like the Christian music industry. The
celebrity.
Individualization, celebrity Christianity, things like that. But if you guys have any more, but just things that are, they're hard to name actually because it's like trying to name water as a fish.
Right.
Like you don't know it.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you guys have other thoughts of what other regimes would be?
How many more people can we offend?
No. But it's a. I mean, these are kingdoms. They're like actual systems of thought, and I mean, it's almost. Could you say that they are all politics? They each of them have their own political system,
I
like
think
laws.
Politics is a system, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, each of these have their own politic, is what I'm saying.
Oh,
like,
yes. I get what you're saying.
You know, like the money one, this plus this equals this. Like the law is work hard, pull your, boots up, all the things. These are the rules to make this system work.
Yeah. I am what I do. Like that's a huge one. because we've become a commodity. And I've even been thinking too that there's a thing called the attention economy. Have you guys read about this? Mm-mm. So where we're entering into, because of the information age, we're entering into an attention economy where our attention is the highest value. And even that, like our attention being the highest commodity, that companies and tech is another powers that be, another regime. Yeah. That all of this stuff is designed to keep our attention. And that's another big one. But if you guys think of anything else.
So what do you, it's
social
fascinating.
Media is another one.
Right.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Right. All the politics of my phone. I mean, which app has my attention, which news feed has my attention. So, I mean, one of our practices is breathing in Jesus, breathing out, you have my attention.
So good. Mm-hmm.
So, but for this, I mean, just how do we help each other just be more aware of these different systems, regimes? Is there a way that he or you have learned to kind of see stuff? I mean, one is just saying, Jesus, open my eyes to all the different regimes.
Right. Maybe growing in familiarity with Jesus, like the contrast that can happen and the way that the kingdom works, like the power underness, the Philippians 2-ness of Jesus and operating in the kingdom.
Okay, what's that mean? Say that.
Like in Philippians 2, where
I have it all memorized. I'm just, these two probably don't.
This is for the people who aren't Christians.
Yeah.
That Jesus didn't consider equality with God something to be grasped, but took on the nature of a servant. And the idea that Jesus, the whole mode of operation for Jesus and now for the kingdom, like 1 John talks a lot about how this is how we know love, that Jesus laid down his life for us. So now we ought to lay down our lives for one another. This is all power under versus our mode of operation, even broadly in all of the regimes, is power over.
Yes.
Like that's our mode. And so I think even for someone very practically right now to recognize in their own lives, where are you tempted to exert power or authority in order to get your way or to advance your agenda? Because that is not operating in the mode of the kingdom.
Right.
And we convince ourselves it is. Like we convince ourselves all the time that it is. Even in Christian circles where it's like, the mega church is a great example of this of like, hey, if we get really big and really alluring, and then we can like get into politics and we can help use our influence for the kingdom by exerting dominance in these areas. But actually Jesus is the opposite of that, where he says, actually, I'm going to lay down all of my rights and subvert the whole entire thing with the power under. So that's where I would say to start is just like recognizing like, where are you so tempted to exert your power? And it could be something as like small as in your family. Like, do you feel like you need to get louder? Do you feel like you need to dominate with your intellect or your gifts? Do you feel like you need to dominate with your gender or your experience? In those situations, that is something that you need to consider aligning with a different kingdom. Yeah.
With your silence, with my coldness, I do that. Yeah.
Your coldness?
With my coldness. I mean, no, I mean, you're just saying all these like it's overpower, but sometimes I can just do that with my silence or my avoiding or...
Yes. I'm not great at like the practicals, I will say. Like I'm definitely more of like an ideas person.
I think that can get practical though. Like when you think about Jesus, he lived in and worked and he like what you were just saying is a very practical thing. Like Jesus lived within a regime and within a system, and he gave us an example of how to practically live our lives within these regimes that we live in, whether it's the political or the national or within the four walls of our house, little regimes that we've built. The practicality is like being aware, being present to God. And then in those places, I think there's a really practicality of saying, I'm not going to assert my dominance, but I'm actually going to serve and find a different way. That's what I hear you saying. And that's what I see you doing in these places when you're seeing a need and you're saying, I'm going to serve in this place. That's subverting the culture. That's subverting the regime. And that's being aware of presence and then being presence and present. So I think sometimes to be in the presence, we have to be present, and maybe not sometimes all the time. And so that's what I'm saying. You, like the regimes are asking us to be non-present.
Yes.
I mean,
mindless.
Right.
Or present to them.
Yeah,
like,
even then, are we? You know, it's like I'm scrolling through 1,000 things. It's like, well, okay, and on to the next thing, on to the next thing, on to the next thing. And even, I don't even think we know what is true and what is right and what is what, you know, anymore. So it does make us like these mindless little things.
This is such an interesting concept of the regime. It's almost like we have these cultures that are hitting us. I mean, I have a culture in my home. My phone has its own culture. There are all these regimes and groups that are fighting for my attention all the time. So I guess some of the questions that come up are, what are my regimes that I've inherited? What are some of the cultures and the regimes that I've bought into? And then what are some of the regimes and cultures that I've built and I've created that are now mainstays in my life? All these things are shaping us, and then in turn, they're shaping the people around us. So it's worth rethinking our thinking on the regimes that we've either inherited, we've bought into, or we've created.
But I think what Fitch has really encouraged us to do in school, but then also lived in his own life, is that idea of just like presence and of discerning and doing things within the context of community. And so I think like versus thinking in terms of like one regime to the next, instead like slowing it down and getting really local and saying like, what are we going to do in our community to discern where the presence of God is and how we can embody that?
Okay, like kingdom, regime is like the 2021 version of this, like a brand. Like we're all on Instagram trying to create our brand at some point. So we've created these like mini kingdoms of ourself. And I mean, and maybe I'm in a little bit of a bubble because I'm an artist and I have to do this thing. But it still feels like I don't even understand like every 20-year-old with a TikTok. But that seems very much like I want to be internet famous. I'm trying to create this thing, whatever it is. But I'm just thinking through that in real time, like, have we all created like our own microcosms of these regimes and kingdoms like in our own lives that's taken us away from being present in real life and in the presence of God?
Is there one that you would say that you're thinking of specifically for you, like in your own life?
I mean, I think it's as broad as that. And one of the things I've had to do lately is get someone else to do my social media, which helps me a little bit. So I'm not stuck on it as much, or concerned with it. Oh, how many whatevers did this get? And so that's helped. The nature of it is, in a while, I replaced it with something else. It's probably just as bad. That's probably mine, but it just hit me as like, well, maybe we're also creating these things. We're not just the product or in the midst of it, but we're actively creating our own forms of the same thing.
And I think if you zoom out, though, like, why are we creating those brands? It's because of the regime. You know what I mean? If we were not being inundated constantly that being famous is a gift, first of all, or that being famous is an end goal, or being wealthy is an end goal, and that these things are achievable if only you get X amount of followers or X amount of, we're being taught this stuff all the time. And so I think that there's like a part in which, yes, we create our micro kingdoms, which is obviously true. And it's also that wouldn't be happening if that wasn't part of like a broader system that was benefiting from it. And so, yeah. So I think you're onto something. And I think that there's like the broader narrative that we're just totally swept into that I don't even know. I don't know that we could live otherwise right now.
Yeah. So then that makes me think, how do we be present in this thing that we know is not going to change? Right. So how do we meet Jesus in those places? What are the practices that we put in place to be able to find him? And be aware of it?
I have thoughts. They're everywhere. But I think sometimes we do create certain things, spaces, brands, because we are responding to the regime, or we're responding in some way that we're like, we want to create a different place where people do belong and people do find the Jesus they're not finding there. But what you're inviting us into is to participate in what's already happening. And so sometimes the divide is, cancel culture. It's whatever it is that's like, well, I'm just going to make something else that is Christ-centered, but it's still very from my filter, controlled by me, all these things. And so I think it's not so much like we can easily cancel everything. And I think that's what happens, sadly, in the church. That doesn't sound like God is present, so we're not even going to bother with it. But to be present is to be in the places we don't think God is in, right? And so it's almost like it's not so black and white. I think for me to just cut out the gift of trying to represent Jesus by building a space for people, but it's like a double-sided coin. But how are you also present in the places that feel uncomfortable to be present in? We have hundreds of thousands of influencers on Instagram.
Right.
And so we could easily be like, why is there so much time wasted on that? And then we have a lot of advocates who also put the same effort and time into their brand and their vision and their, what they're trying to do. And I think it's interesting to know how can both happen to where like we don't cut out a full regime, let's say social media, because we don't know how to represent Jesus in it, but to actually find creative ways to do it. So I think sometimes I'm like, these brands are trying to be creative and being present in a regime that's trying to steal our attention.
What you're touching on is the principle of proportionality, which means that for whatever capacity something has to be good, it also has to do harm. And so what you're saying is like, do we need to cut out, or what I hear you saying is, do we need to cut out the whole thing because there's also good happening to you?
Right. I think the danger is to cancel something.
Right.
Right. There's some things that I'm like, yes, that's not even of God's character. That's different.
Right.
That's an actual thing that is anti-love. And then there's other things that are like, I think it had a purpose of love, and we're in the world and it's been tainted. And so we're trying to be present in those things. I start to get curious when it's easy to just be like, all of these things are bad and I need to find what's good.
Right.
And then we start to create these brands that are like my mini good version. And we were trying to invite people into it, but you're saying, these things are bad. There's also really good opportunities and really good things that are happening. So I'm going to go into that space instead of try to create my own good version of something.
My highest gift is prophet and then teacher. So like the prophetic part of me does tend to want to say like, let's burn the whole mofo down.
Right.
Like let's burn it all down because and it's a good thing. I think like because I feel that like literally since I was born, I had an ability to discern when something fishy was happening. And that is like my tendency is to do that. But then also there's like the shepherd and the pastoral gift, what it sounds honestly like is what's coming out of you, which is saying like, hey, hold on a second. Like we don't have to burn this whole thing down because there's still people who are trying to do good in the world and all that stuff. And so I think that there's also just like, this is where perspectivism comes in, where everyone has a different perspective and pluralism comes in too, where like there's no more where we have one single culture where all of us even look at the same word and hear the same thing anymore. So there's always going to be like a variety of opinions, and it's just a total melting pot of conversations and opinions and regimes and cultures. And my tendency 100%, which is what I think you were picking up on, is to be like, let's burn it all down.
Yeah.
I'm like, let's take it all down, because to me, that feels so like liberating, and to help people see like freaking prophet Jeremiah. The city's going up in flames. And like to be able to see and draw attention to the things that are just grasping for our attention and for our hearts. And we don't even realize it. Like if people actually gave enough time to think about how much money takes their attention, affection, and desire, like I think it would startle people if they were able to really witness it. And so I think that there's like such a gift in that. But then also, yes, when you burn the whole thing down, you lose people in the process. So it's a good thing that we have shepherds and pastors here as well.
Without you pushing and prodding and going, you guys, do we not see this thing?
Totally.
We would be like, well, let's just keep loving everyone. But then without this tempered, she's a toe, you're a finger, or whatever this is. And without the whole of all of us, we're not really beautiful. We're just extreme. I mean, all of us with whatever we do.
The extremities, exactly.
So if we're all practicing, what did you say? If we're present to the presence of God, and we are actually representers of God, then we are his body, all of us. And if we're all doing this together, we are a powerful force.
We are,
But alone in our individual Christian thing, just it's about me. Trust the Lord with all your heart, Tim, which is true, but that's actually not written to me, nor is it like an invitation to me. It's like as us as a whole, if all of us are trusting the Lord with all of our hearts, we're actually a powerful body, or else we're just a finger walking around.
And that's where it can get really revolutionary to me too.
Totally.
Like if people would be willing, and this has happened in my life, like I mentioned, my life group, we're about to hit the 4-year mark where we've met every Sunday.
Wow.
And well, that's a lie. But we don't meet in the summers.
Thank
and
you.
I want to be truthful. I want to
you.
be truthful. But on Sundays we meet. And the idea that,
I asked Todd, I said, hey, Todd,
I'm
how
always
often do you
so
guys
conscious about
how often do you guys meet? I asked him before this, and he said she's going to say every single week.
I was lying.
You
If anyone
jumped
is
in.
going to fact check this,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
No, but with that life group, that has transformed my life more than literally anything I've ever learned in school or anything, because what it was is a willingness to interconnect my life with other people in a way that is very uncomfortable, where we are so trained to believe if I'm going to make this choice, I don't need to ask anyone else about it, or I don't need to let anyone else in on it, or if I'm having a fight with my friend, it's just between us two.
Right.
But when you're willing to actually enter into a community, which is literally the Christian life, like Christian life cannot be lived on an individual basis, period. It has nothing to do with salvation. But in terms of actual Christian life, it cannot happen on your own. But I really wasn't living that way until I started this life group. And then I realized, I have been missing out on actual community living, but there's a discomfort there that we all reject and resist because we want to be individuals. But even down to like, I had a fight with my friend earlier this year, and we just could not get on the same page. So what did we do? It was so uncomfortable, but we freaking went to life group. And we opened it up and we said, guys, we cannot get on the same page. Like we cannot meet each other. And through that, we had the support of these other people who could come in and help our relationship heal. And we had the trust there that they were able to actually be for both of us. And all of that to say, like, have you heard of that happening often? No.
Not in 2021.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And because there's also obviously like there are potential ditches on both sides of that. But all of that to say, I think that when you think of like regimes and things like that, there are positives and negatives everywhere. But actually, I enjoy thinking about that can sometimes keep us from just moving and just in participating. And so I think that like a huge thing in terms of individualism, if people wanted to get started, is like, really open up yourself to community and see what happens.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Hopefully this is helpful.
Yeah.
I feel like we were all over
I feel like
the
I'm like
place.
thinking a
Yeah.
lot right
Yeah.
now. We've got
is
like a
how it
lot to
should
think
be,
about.
right?
Yeah.
Well, now it's time for 10,000 minute questions
Yes.
with Savannah Locke. When I dance, I look like. Oh, she's doing it right now. everybody. She's doing
Cheerleader.
I know. I was like, this is great.
More like palm team,
I
I
was
feel like.
trying to like figure out a boxer cheerleader.
Yeah. Wow, you guys, that was powerful.
Pretty good.
A few things almost got hit when she did that, but that was really great. I'm glad you didn't have to see that, people.
So good.
You'd respect her more, you know. The 80s.
I hate the 80s. I hate them. I can't. Todd and I have disagreements. I can't with the music. It makes me depressed. I can't.
Well, do we need
They
to
got
have
some
a...
sad songs
I think
in
it
the
sounds
80s.
like Sonic the Hedgehog. All of it.
I love Sonic.
Okay.
Just kidding.
Do we need to have a confrontation on this? Do we need to talk to your life group about
Todd
this?
and I know.
Yeah.
Todd and I know that this is somewhere we do not agree.
Aw.
Yeah.
So that stops the making out right away. 80s song comes on, eyes open.
I don't feel that our hearts are really like emotionally engaged in the 80s conversation, but yes.
Wow.
Okay, 3 words to best describe yourself.
Oh God. Oh God.
Right? Yeah. No, I think that's... We could find something
Pretty
really
good.
deep there.
I would say how I would hope to be described by my friends.
Yeah.
Okay. Whimsical,
Yeah.
warm, and non-judgmental. That's what I would hope that people would describe me as.
Yeah. Love that. They said very different things, but I think that those are great. 3 favorite movies or 3 favorite shows.
Yeah, shows only. That's all
great.
that I'm into.
Great.
This will be just right now. Ted Lasso, The Morning Show, and Ozark.
Come on.
Yeah.
You could
Good choices.
come over to our house. Watch them all.
Jason Bateman.
He's the best.
Yeah.
I just love him
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah.
He named his daughter Maple, and I now want to name any future kids that I have Maple.
All of them?
Just all of them.
All of them, Maple 1,
Maple
Maple 2.
syrup, maple jam.
Yes. Yes.
Be a whole thing.
Maple tree.
I was going to say, what are
Maple
other...
leaf.
Yeah, I don't know. There's
Maple
probably a
leaf,
lot.
maple tree,
I love
maple
it. Did
syrup.
you say maple jam?
Yeah, I feel like I did. Let's get some
probably
New
is one.
Hampshire people up
Where's
here and
South?
see how it goes.
New
Yeah, I don't
Hampshire.
know. Seems right.
This is going to be called Maple
No
Jam.
one
This
in New
episode is
Hampshire
called...
has ever had a shout out
Yeah.
in a podcast.
Yes.
So I'm just really happy for
Yeah.
them
Just
right
trying
now.
to think of maple trees.
Maple
It
jam.
seems right.
Okay, maple custard.
I think I bought maple syrup in New Hampshire at this little gas station once, driving through,
Made in New York City or
and
something.
that's why.
Isn't the
Pennsylvania.
Canadian team the Maple Leafs?
That's Toronto, right?
Well,
Sports.
total
Like
sports
the
balls.
hockey, I said the
Sports balls.
hockey people,
Yeah.
their names
Yeah.
are the
Yeah,
Maple
yeah,
Leafs.
yeah.
Crying.
We've got Elias Dummer on next week, and he'll be able to tell us
He'll-
that because
he can
he's,
let
he's,
us
he's
know.
one of those Canadians.
Confirm the Maple Leafs.
Or is it the baseball team?
I don't know. We're gonna find out. So
We're gonna Google it.
everybody, stay tuned for
Just
next
the
week
10,000
with
minutes
Elias
of
Dummer. It's
Oh,
gonna be
that's
so
a
great.
cliffhanger.
Sports
We've got a
questions.
lot of jokes to say for this Canadian coming up. Okay, the '90s. Do you like the '90s?
Yeah, they were a good vibe. That's when I was growing up.
Is that what you'd say about the
Easy
'90s?
Bake Oven.
Ugh,
Hey Arnold.
so good.
Those are the things that come Hillary Duff. That's what comes to mind.
Favorite song you didn't write?
You're So Vain by Carly Simon. Oh, it's so good. You're so vain, you probably think this song is about you. Who does not want to say that?
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Pet peeves.
I hate when people ask me questions
Oh,
or
gosh.
talk in movies or television shows. When I say if we are ever watching a movie or a television show together, do not ask me questions because
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
I don't know either. I may be prophetic, but I don't know the future.
Perfect.
Wow, that's a zinger. There
And
it is.
Todd does that. He asks questions.
Yeah.
But
Hillary,
he's
yeah.
just trying to connect, and that's what I tell myself, Savannah. He's wanting to connect with you,
Yeah.
but I'm like, I
I'm
need to watch
very
Jason
good
Bateman
at
right now.
watching television, so I don't like to be like bothered
Interrupted.
in the midst of
It
it.
locks
as well.
me in.
Like,
Netflix, a regime, but it does lock me in.
Yeah.
it does.
Yeah.
Does its job well.
Yeah, Hillary asks me all the time. So do you think that's gonna happen? I'm like, babe, boy, I don't. I'm watching this real time with
I
you
think
right
I'm
now.
the one who's like, I'm locked in, but I'm like, oh, here's what they're gonna do this, and then I'm wrong every time, you know. And Ken's just like, she doesn't care, but she's laughing at me the whole
Yeah.
time. She's like,
Or like predicting the script.
yeah,
Sometimes
I'm
I'll
like
do.
really trying to do it.
Yeah.
When I get it right, I'm like, obviously,
Yeah, maple jam
Yeah,
every
maple
time.
jam.
All right, well, that's all we have for that one. Hopefully that was helpful, and we got more to come. So please go check out 10,000minutes.com. If you guys want to get the free text messages, encouragements, text 10K10K to 55678. 10K to 55678. Go check us out on Facebook or the Instagrams, all that stuff. And please share this with your friends, would you? And rate, subscribe, and comment. It'd be helpful. Thanks, guys. Okay, see you soon. Hear you soon? Hear me soon?